for supporting the leadership initiative for Headquarters 242.
Sure.
If we can start off, just tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Ryan Chismark. I am a partner with Morrison and Head. So our firm is a property tax consulting firm. We represent institutional owners of real estate in supporting them in a value that you can use for tax purposes. So every single year an appraisal district says, hey, that building's worth $100 million. Our firm represents the owner and says, you know what, it's really worth less than that, it's worth 80. And we cut a deal or go to a hearing where we reduce the value to 90 million, save them in property taxes, and we get paid.
Awesome. How'd you get started in that venture?
Yeah, so I worked for a developer in Syracuse, New York. I grew up in upstate New York, and there was a regional mall development, and that was my first introduction into commercial real estate. And I just got fucking sick of the weather and the gray, and I moved down to Texas in 2012.
Okay.
Literally did a Google search, good jobs, nice weather, this is where all the jobs were. And then I ended up with Cushman & Wakefield. And
Okay.
There was a guy down the hall who's from Rochester, New York. I said, what do you do? And he said, hey, I'm the U.S. head of property tax at Cushman. And you're an analyst. It seems like you have a skill set where you're extroverted while you're sitting behind a desk.
Right.
And that just morphed into a career path for the last 10 years.
Awesome. Where along that journey, where have you found success?
Yeah, so the most important thing that I was thinking through this, it's a really important question. It's about authenticity. And so one of the things I'm very big on is values, right? And it sounds like bullshit, but when you really boil down who you are as a person, I have 4 pillars to who I am, the same way you have 4 pillars to a building, to use a real estate analogy, right?
Yep.
And values are being, right?
Right.
Being graceful, being classy, being integritous, and being fun. Those are my 4
Nice.
pillars, cornerstone values of who I am. Integrity being the strongest one, if I had to pick
Sure.
a cornerstone value. In my industry, in commercial real estate, it's very cutthroat. People think Wall Street's tough. Those kids couldn't carry a candle to what the fuck was on our, you know what I mean? I promise you.
Yeah.
But you're only as good as your word and consistency and being authentically yourself. And I told you in the warm-up interview that
Yeah.
I grew up with a nickname, it's Cheese, right? It's a differentiator, and people are like, this guy, who the fuck is this guy?
Right.
Like, his nickname's Cheese. But when you go into a room full of people, you go to a happy hour or an industry event, networking, you meet all these people, you don't remember anybody's fucking name, but you're like, that guy's Cheese.
Right.
And you can only do that if you're not completely full of shit. Like, he's Cheese and he's cool. He knows what he's talking about. He's integritous. He follows through. His reputation precedes him. He stands for something.
Yes.
What I've always wanted to do is be the same guy inside the conference room and in the streets.
Yep.
Civilian Cheese and office Cheese, same guy, right?
Right.
So you know that no matter what, you have an integritous, credible guy the whole way through. That has really launched my career. I sound different, I act different, but everybody knows what they're getting at face value. The thing that's important is managing expectations. So we've had a lot of success, but including a measuring stick in everything you do. Today's goal is this. Our team needs to get here by the close of business. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Or with a client, hey, it's going to be 12 months before we get this done. I know we're going to get to this value, but the process to get there is going to take 12 months. So whatever you need to do to set aside cash on the front end so that you're not in a bad position knowing that we have a real timeline. I'd rather eat the shit sandwich up front.
Right.
Just let everybody know it's going to suck, but I want you to know now, as opposed to you get 6 months in. Ryan, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're not performing.
Right.
If I manage the expectations and the timeline on the front end, I'm not setting myself up for failure, and that's extremely important, along with communication. So the number one reason people come to our firm is we're easy to get a hold of, we communicate effectively, and it's a huge imperative part of our business. If you go dark on somebody, or you're inconsistent in your communication, reliability isn't there. It shuts down the whole process. They lose faith in you.
Yep.
You're not authentic, and they can't count on you.
Yep. No, it's so refreshing to hear. A lot of, like I said earlier in the pre-interview, was a lot of parallels that I'm noticing.
Okay.
Something I've pitched to our organization. If we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. So we have a deliberate risk assessment. Sometimes we say, hey, this is a hazard on the range. Well, we're going to mitigate that by wearing our body armor. If we put that in our risk assessment, we're going to wear our body armor. We're not just going to put that so our boss signs and says, yes, you conduct this training, and then we're going to say, yeah, pitch it.
Gotcha.
But it's a
Smart.
keeping with, it's, hey, I said I was going to do this, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be available. Where have you recognized, I said failures, I really like the term opportunity for improvement or something that's not a failure, because you can always learn from something, but where have you recognized areas for improvement?
Yeah, the biggest challenge we have, and I made a note on this, is personnel. Every business, I think, comes down to personnel. Military, I'm sure, is the same thing. I used to think that was a bullshit cliche that I heard in my business courses. They said, oh, you're only as good as your people. Until it happened this year where we had my right and left hand guy left. They went to do a startup. They took their year-end bonuses, go to do startup. Now I don't have key personnel. I'm not leveraged appropriately. Now I'm hung out to dry. I'm more granular.
Right.
And personnel is so different now.
Yes.
And so where we failed is retaining employees for the long term. But where I've also failed is managing my expectations related to what a reasonable duration is for anybody to stay in a profession.
Okay, yeah.
Because where I went to, there's an adjunct professor of real estate at SMU. All he does is help place talent after they graduate.
Right.
And I said, God, this guy was with me for 5 years.
Right.
He left. I thought he was going to be a partner. We were going to be in this for the long term. He goes, Ryan, how old is the kid? I go, 29. And he goes, you had him for 5 years? You outperform the average employee for a millennial by 2 years.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Right.
You outperformed. And I'm like, what? He goes, you are the problem. You need to manage your expectations. People are going to stay in a role for 3 years and it's next up, next up, next up.
Right.
Make sure that you have the appropriate leverage and training, that 3-year person is communicating to the 2-year person, is communicating to the 1-year person, because that bench strength is your next senior guy.
Right.
Is that a great way to run an organization? Probably not, but that's the reality of the world that we're in today. If you outperform that, awesome. Do your best to identify people you think there'll be stickiness with and loyalty. But outside of that, you got to know you got people in 3-year increments.
Yeah. Okay. And honestly, that again, not to be cliche and capture the parallels, but part of this and what I put in there is Army struggles to retain personnel.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, we're in a recruiting crisis.
Okay.
And in addition to the recruiting, getting new personnel, we're struggling to retain key personnel. So yeah.
It's everywhere right now.
It really is. It really is. What's your thoughts on work ethic? And that is going to lead into what is your work day or week or month look like? But work ethic.
This one gets me fired up. So I could go a day on this. I mean, I really could. I don't know how to say any of this eloquently.
Yeah.
Right? So
let it fly.
I don't understand a mindset, and I'm trying to be empathetic to people's mindset where they don't have this, at least a fundamental work ethic, right? You come in the office at 9, you leave at 5. That's pretty fundamental.
Right.
When I came up, I was always told, I'm at my desk, I'm at there 7:30. My boss is going to come in at 8:30. That's fine, right? But I got to be there before him.
Right.
I'm a resource available to him. I'm at his disposal. It's my role. I'm starting at the bottom. That doesn't make you a bitch or whatever. It's just,
right.
You got to start at time 0. You got to start at the bottom rung and fucking work your way up. That's
right.
just the way it is.
Yep.
When he leaves at 5, I'm not going home. I'm not popping up with my golf clubs and like, hey, I'm out of there. I got to stay longer.
Right.
Because he's going to call me in the next hour. Did you see that email come through? Can you send that out? Right? I have to be available to him. So it's very clear that if I was available and I could be a resource for him and make his life easier, I was going to have a path to that next level. And I'm not like a big corporate ladder guy, but you got to start somewhere.
Right.
This next generation, I'm not going to be the guy that shits on the generation
right.
behind you, but
right.
they have different priorities, I'll say it that way.
Sure.
Where they're more work-life balance and flexibility, but I think they take extreme liberties when it comes to defining what that is. They believe that they can come in at the same time as you, that if they don't have an answer to something, they don't need to wait for you. They can Google it, they can figure it out, ChatGPT, I got you figured out.
Right.
I don't need your experience isn't as valuable.
Right.
And then they have flexibility. Oh, I got a doctor's appointment, got to cut out early. Not, can I leave early? I have this, it's a priority, but I know there are things going on. I'd like to plan around what we're doing this week and trying to accomplish as a team.
Right.
It's, I'm leaving. It's like, wow. So you're in charge. I'm working for you now. I'm just leaving, cutting out. Must be fucking nice. I have a headache. I'm going home.
Right.
I go, I wouldn't have come in the last 6 months if it's all it took to go home was a fucking headache. You kidding me? Have you worked in this business?
Yeah.
So work ethic to me was it. I think some of it is just you're born with it. Some of it's your environment growing up. And I grew up in Syracuse, New York. 48% of the kids in Syracuse, New York, grow up in poverty. That's the worst in the United States. Like, you gotta fucking get up and get it, because there was no safety net. There was no falling back. There was no, my parents are gonna bail me out. They're gonna pay for college. I got somewhere else to go to. I got nothing. My dad's a handyman. He's gonna wake up in the morning, and I don't care if he's hungover. I don't care if he's tired. I don't care what the situation is. Sick, right? He's fucking toughing it out.
Yep.
And he's gonna go work with his hands every day. He's gonna come home because he's got 2 kids there and a wife. And was he enjoying it? Was he passionate about it?
Right.
No, probably not most days.
Right.
But that's what it was to be a man and to provide. So, look, I get that the world is shifting towards this. We need flexibility and work-life balance, and I completely support that, but it has to be within reason, and you have to know when you're able to do that, what seniority level you have, the permissions you're allowed to have, before you can just go and say, I need flexibility.
Right.
Because the number one question I get right now when I interview is, can I work from home? I'm like, I can't mentor and coach you from home. I cannot. You can't see how I communicate with clients on the phone when you're at home. You can't see that I duck out for 5 seconds to take a breath in the hallway when you're at home. You can't see the little intricacies to my day that make me successful and learn those little between the lines thing when you're sitting in your living room unpausing the Netflix show and waiting for the next email from me. You can't do that. So you're actually doing yourself a disservice and putting yourself, I would argue, a year or 2 behind where you would be if you were physically in the office. And I can't help that next generation that doesn't see that. You want the cooler talk. You want the bonding with your peers in the office. That camaraderie and fabric is irreplaceable. You can't do it from your living room. I don't care about Zoom.
Yep.
I don't give a fuck. It's not just a generational thing. Your first few years, you have to be live. You have to be.
Yes. Yep. No, it's agreed, man. Appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I love the natural, I can tell it's sincere. So
Yeah, oh yeah. God bless.
yeah.
Work ethic.
I'm struggling to be like the cheerleader in the background. I'm like, hell
I know.
yeah, 'cause I have the
Like-
same views. I want to be as impartial as I can, so I don't put undue influence on
Sure.
your responses. But yeah, I concur. I
Go to the
concur.
office. Like,
Yeah.
when you get older, you're gonna have flexibility, but
Right.
come on.
Yep. Yeah, and so you kind of already touched that work-life balance. But what is a work day or week or month? I guess day and week is probably more relevant. But what does a work day and a work week look like for you?
Our business is seasonal, so from April through July 4th, we really don't have any time off.
Okay.
We encourage people not to have time off. We're working, long hours,
Sure.
maybe 10 hours a day. We eat lunch in the office.
Sure.
And that's just grind. We call it blocking and tackling. Like, you show up every single day. It's not the sexy stuff,
Right.
but it's necessary. It's moving you towards your objective, right?
Right,
It's necessary. But when we're talking about the rest of the year, we have incredible flexibility. We have business development trips where we travel. We have happy hours. We have lunch meetings. We have the ability to network at different events, speaking engagements, so
Sure.
on and so forth. So that work-life balance happens outside of the seasonality.
Okay.
We recently implemented flexible Fridays, which I think is actually good. People in real estate sandbag Friday anyways.
Okay.
And I think it's,
We do too.
it is, yeah, it is what it is. But I think the world's kind of going that way, and whatever. I remember, so I had this teacher, I'll never forget her. She was so, what was her name? Mrs. Rausch. And I remember it was a summer in New York, and we're fucking tired, and it's been a long year, and it's May, and she said, okay, we're starting a project. It was a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like Friday at 2 p.m. and we've got another 2 hours of school, and this girl goes, Ms. Rausch, it's Friday. Can't we just do it next week? And she goes, sweetie, there'll be a Friday at the end of every week for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, that's right. Think of all the productivity that's lost. But that said, you have to have, in today's environment, some level of work-life balance, some level of flexibility in order to be a competitive
Sure.
recruiter.
Yeah.
So I've accepted that I need to adapt. My value system might be such that you got to be in the office every day,
Sure.
but I also need an eye to the future. I'm not going to be the old guy. Well, in my day, this is how we did it.
Right.
Nobody gives a shit about my opinion. At a certain point, the
Right.
world's changing.
Yes.
I need to evolve with the world. And so I've accommodated that by having flexible Fridays, checking in with people. They're responsive, and it's actually worked pretty well.
Okay, nice. Yeah, Friday's 20% of the work week. You know, it's like, hey, I'm gonna cut 20% of your profit right off the
That's
top.
a great way to think of it.
Before Uncle Sam takes 25%, before so and so, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
oof. But no, it's a good point. You gotta kind of mold with the times, and so yeah. Do you ever encounter fear or stress associated with business? How I want to start this, like maybe a flexible Friday, or I want to pursue this new venture, and I'm kind of worried it's gonna, you know, is it gonna take off? Is it gonna be successful? Or, you know, hey, business has been stressful. What have you found effective to manage those feelings?
So here's what I would say. I've implemented this idea: you can't live life scared. There are a lot of things that I cannot control, and it took me a while to figure that out.
Right.
Russia invades Ukraine, and I'm like, fuck, should I be stacking more money in the sidelines because I'm a little bit nervous about what that's going to do to the world,
yeah,
to the business? I can't control that though. So how do I separate those two things? And then it's going to sound like hippie bullshit, and I'll never forget, I started going to therapy, which if you're going to play at this level, like, so we have one of the 100 fastest growing companies in DFW.
Yeah.
2 of the last 4 years. Like, we're lighting shit on fire. I'm 36 years old.
Yeah.
I'm eating my peers' lunch.
Yeah.
It's not a cocky thing. That's an objective thing. And the
Right.
reason I'm bringing that up is a result of something that I did. I started going to therapy. I'm like, I'm stressed out.
Right.
I don't know how to think about these things. And that's where I created my value system. That's where I created my buckets. You can control this, but you cannot control this.
Yes.
So when I'm thinking through those things, it became very apparent to me that I need tools and resources to assist me throughout the day because I play in a high pressure environment. I'm not getting shot at.
No, yeah, no.
But I'm playing in a high pressure environment with dollars, millions of dollars at stake on any given deal. How do I manage that? And she goes, Ryan, you need to meditate. It was the last fucking thing. I go, no. Fuck that. There's no fucking way I'm meditating. Give me something else. And she goes, well, I could throw you on medicine or do something like that. I go, I'm not doing that shit. And she goes, then do medicine, then do meditation.
Right.
And so I go, what do I do?
Yeah.
So you sit on this little pillow in this deal like this, and you breathe. And she goes, it's really it.
Yeah.
It's much harder than I thought, but when you sit there, she goes, you're always in your free time. She goes, do you sit? And I go, yeah. And she goes, no, you're on your phone. You're scrolling. You're talking to somebody. You're texting somebody. You're doing something. You're not truly sitting in silence at any point in your day until you go to bed. That's unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. So your mind is completely engaged at all times.
Right.
We're not set up that way. People didn't have Netflix to pop on back in the day. Lights go down. You don't have electricity. Light a candle. Like you're there alone, right?
Yep.
There's no stimuli. So now I sit there. I meditate. I make my intentions known, and I breathe. And it's amazing what's running through you. And if you learn to do that, it actually changes the game entirely of what you're able to handle, how you're able to process things. I was the biggest, I hated the idea. I still can't believe that I do it, honestly.
Right.
But it changed the game for me. So I'm a big advocate for, you need a full-time therapist at all times at your disposal, or some third party that you can bounce things off of.
Sure.
Not your buddy.
Right.
Somebody that's going to be objective that says, Ryan, you're full of shit.
Yep.
You're way overreacting. And my therapist will tell me all the time, he goes, Ryan, your attitude sucks.
Mm-hmm.
You're the problem. Your attitude's terrible. I'm like, my wife's not going to tell me that.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, the therapist has got to tell me that.
Yeah.
That's helpful, and meditation is helpful. That's how I manage stress.
Okay. No, that's, and yeah, you know, that's therapy, behavioral health, managing, all of that is definitely a relevant part of military service as well. So it's good to hear that those, you know, transcend
That's
business, military.
good. So they do have that as part of the military?
So there's a number
Mental
of
health resources?
Yeah, we definitely
Okay.
do mental health resources, and then we have a number of different. We have like a military family life counselor and a number of different
Oh, wow.
resources. In fact, we have kind of an embedded lady headquarters personnel will know who I'm talking about, but
Nice.
that kind of comes in and teaches. She actually teaches a breathing technique. In one of her, she has a number of classes that she can teach and talk through.
That's huge.
And so yeah, it's man, it's amazing as I'm going through this kind of initiative with you know, business professionals. It's amazing again how many parallels you know, just in life that there are really, because a lot of times in the military we feel like oh, it's such a unique, military is different than anything else. It's like, yeah, on the surface it may be, but at the end of the day, it's, stress management, work-life balance, work ethic, leadership.
And that's so interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so on that, decompression kind of flows into that. Any hobbies or decompression activities that you enjoy, and then what's your thoughts on vacations or time off? I know you said April to July. It's put your head in the game. We're not looking up until we're through July 4th. But what does time off and decompression look like?
So I suck at this.
Okay.
And this is something I should have referred to this when you were saying, what do you struggle with or what are you bad at?
Sure.
And then my wife tells me all the time, you need a hobby. Because my brain is always, in my free time, I really do enjoy thinking about different ways to help with the business or different angles or the creativity. Like that's my canvas.
Yes.
But she goes, your work can also be your hobby. You need an actual hobby to turn work off.
Right.
Which is fair. So I golf. I'm not an avid golfer. I'm still working through that is the answer to your question.
Sure.
Philanthropy is really interesting.
Okay.
So I'm the chairman of the board of Make-A-Wish North Texas.
Oh, nice.
And so I got involved for two reasons. One, if I'm going to be this guy that's, not to get political, but laissez-faire kind of government,
sure.
Right? There's going to be a private solution. I better step the fuck up and not just say, because if the government's not going to provide a solution, somebody's got to provide a solution. I'm that guy now.
Yeah, I'm your guy.
Right? So how am I going to impact my community? I do it in a number of different ways, but one of the things I'm passionate about is kids that are their innocence is stolen. Sure. I have a really hard time with that.
Yep.
So when I go in and I have a direct impact on somebody's life who needs it, that's amazing. And I don't do philanthropic things because I get something from it. I do it actually, it's a giant inconvenience. It's a time suck, but it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And I can create an influence, but it does have this ancillary impact on my life where it gives me perspective. Sometimes we're so caught in our own shit that we don't see what's going on. So there's this kid, we have these kids come and they do presentations after their wish and they tell us what they loved about it and they have a slide deck and it's really, really cool. So this one kid, he shows us his little line on
sure.
his chest, right? And he goes, by the time I was 6 years old, I had 10 heart surgeries. He goes, I'm a living hero. And I was like, fuck my day right off.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't care about my, this is stupid. The kid had 10 heart surgeries and he's a superhero.
Yeah.
His mom's standing there crying. I can't imagine. You have 4 kids.
Yeah.
I just had a 1-year-old daughter, right? And I'm like, I can't imagine. I go back to my job and I'm thinking to myself, wow, there's other stuff that happens in the world that's way more important than what I'm doing right now. That perspective, and I'm very grateful and thankful and lucky and blessed, right? So that gratitude piece it comes from doing these things philanthropically.
Yeah.
I do think vacations are important.
Right.
Resetting, you usually don't know how much you need one until you've gone.
Till you go
and you're like, God damn, I was stressed, right?
Right.
But having a kid now, there's a distinction that needs to be made between a trip and a vacation.
Okay.
A trip is what you do with your family.
Right.
Because you got kids screaming on the plane or whatever the hell it is, and you're still waking up and feeding them. A vacation is without kids.
Right. There you go.
Where you can truly reset, and you got to distinguish the two. So you need a vacation. That's going to allow you to reset. Trips, when people do, I'd go to whatever with the family you didn't reset.
Right. All right, so bonus question: if you could rewind the clock, and you're to your credit, man, you're probably the youngest of that's on the list of people in this leadership initiative.
Yeah.
But if you could rewind the clock and share one thing with younger you, what would it be?
So this is so funny. When I read through the questions last night, I saw this question, and when I was interviewing for my first job, whenever I would talk to anybody, this is the question I would ask them.
Yep.
What would you ask your younger self? And I said, since that time, I really haven't reflected on it.
Right.
And then so you got me thinking. So I was trying to get in that headspace of young me and where I am now and what I would tell them. So I was playing my 50 Cent from back in college. And just trying to get in that headspace. And this is going to probably be a really surprising answer. And I don't want people nodding off on this. This is real. And I was told this and I go, fuck you, there's no way that that's accurate. But this is true. Pick the right spouse. That is the best business advice and life advice I can give anybody. The reason I said that is because, one, I had a failed marriage before.
Yep.
And two, because there's very real stats that 50% of all marriages fail. So there's a 50-50 chance that you fail at that. That's one of the highest probabilities of failure of anything you'll ever do in your life.
Yep.
You could try to be a successful business owner, half of that's going to go away. If you get a divorce, half of that's going to go away.
Yep.
There are very few things you can do in business that would fuck up your business so bad that you would lose half of your business.
Right.
But marrying the wrong person can do that.
Yep.
And this is the person that will instill the values in your children. The most important thing you can do in the world is raise a child. That person is going to raise a child, instill values in them, and that person is going to interact with other people in the world. That has a real lasting impact. If you don't share a value system or cleanliness or communication style, that person is your therapist, your personal trainer. You guys literally, you build a life around this individual. If you're not 100% certain and you know the math, you're not exception to the rule on the math. Nobody's exception.
Right.
The math is the math. It's 100% accurate.
Right.
Find the right partner. If you have the people that I've seen that are the most successful have long-standing wives alongside them. They have long-standing husbands alongside them.
Right.
They communicate effectively. They have wonderful children. They have a very clear family unit.
Yep.
The ones that sputter or are inconsistent or are on their 17th wife,
Right.
it's because they haven't taken the time to prioritize that. The number one business decision you can make and personal decision you can make is that spouse that you choose to do life with.
Grandma, she lives a few miles from here. She tells me, I was like, man, are you sure, Grammy? Is that right? Most important decision you'll ever make, who you marry.
Is that what she says?
Yeah, no, and she's 90 now, and yeah, but no, man, that's great. That's great.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, so Ryan, Cheese,
there you go. See?
yeah, remember, that closes out. Thanks for supporting the leadership initiative.
You're welcome.
So
It was a great time.
yeah.